How are your voters going to react to this China trade war?
So, when we talk about trade policy, we've really got to differentiate it between the discussion of tariffs and, say, the NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement. They're obviously, my supplier community is clearly very concerned about what the president has been doing, the increased prices. And as you talk about these, the media has only really been portraying what the increase in cost is going to be in consumer goods the last couple of days, if not the last 24 hours. So I think a lot of people have been worried about their jobs. They've been worried about those jobs being shipped overseas, and now they're beginning to look at okay, what's going to happen in terms of increased consumer goods? And I think there's almost a schizophrenia about how do you protect jobs in the United States and yet at the same time have a level playing field for workers and not have people pay another $100 per an appliance item.
We don't know how this is going to turn out. Obviously, it's going to be a short-term impact, but it's going to have a political effect. The president has some Democratic support, though, as you well know. Democrats as well as Republicans in Congress have long been complaining, you as well, about China and the way it steals our intellectual property.
A steel plant that is finally coming down that's been empty on the rivers of my district for 25 years. And those steel workers don't even have the pensions that they've earned. We don't have a level playing field in this country, and we have to have fair trade policy. When you move over to the discussion of NAFTA, General Motors moved a Blazer plant to Mexico last August, and they're paying $1.50 an hour. So how is our worker going to compete in a level playing field? And by the way, the Mexican worker is also being hurt. So it's a very complicated issue, but we need to do something about trade policies because, quite frankly, it's been hurting the American worker.
Let me also ask you about a big issue, which is Anita Hill, sexual violence, the Violence Against Women's Act. Anita Hill has a column in today's New York Times, and it touches on something that you talked about, not just what she was talking about in the Clarence Thomas hearings, but the whole question of sexual violence. She says sexual violence is a national crisis that requires a national solution. We missed that point if we end the discussion at whether I should forgive Mr. Biden. This crisis calls for all leaders to step up and say the healing from sexual violence must begin now. I will take up that challenge. And she does point out in her op-ed that she believes that if he had led a different kind of hearing back in 1991, it might have had a ripple effect and perhaps we would be catching up a lot faster than post the Me Too movement. You spoke out about this, about the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women's Act, and about your own experience in a news conference. I wanted to play some of that back in April.
Andrea, I'm going to tell you again, I think it's a much more complicated issue. When the Me Too movement started, I said to you and to many of our other women friends, we're in a bubble when it comes to Washington, D.C., the media, and Hollywood. And the Me Too movement wouldn't be real until for the factory worker, the partner in a law firm for teachers, and in too many places saying something still carries a detriment to it. I would be afraid I, myself, am never going to tell you some of the stories that I have because I would still pay a price. So she's right that it is much broader. I fear that, everybody thinks we're making such great strides as we do have more movement on the Me Too movement, but it's not real for working women across this country. If you say something, there's still a stigma attached to it. You, at your workplace, become a problem maker. And if I'm trying to help and mentor young women, I have to help them navigate it so they're not hurt. And that's what I had a woman, a union member tell me she was raped on the factory floor, but swore me to secrecy because of the consequences that she would pay. It's not going to be, I'm with Anita Hill and saying, how do we work together so that we change the climate that we're in so that every woman is in a safe workplace?
Well, thank you for leading by example. You've been a great mentor to a lot of people. Debbie Dingell, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.